Welcome to the DoughRoller Money Podcast. My name is Rob Berger, and today in episode 205, we're going to talk about YNAB, which means you need a budget. It's a budgeting software that I've talked about in the past. We're going to talk about it today because the folks at YNAB have recently released a significant upgrade to their product. It's gone from YNAB version 4 to YNAB version 5, and there have been some dramatic changes, many of which I like. A couple, I'll be honest with you, I'm not so fond of. I still think it's the best budgeting tool out there. And so we're going to talk about those changes. We're also going to talk about something that was just released that deals with investing. And I think it's the most important thing you can read this year to become a better investor. And it's free. I'm going to tell you what it is, why I think it's so important, and how you can get it. And then finally, we're going to respond to an email that I received from a listener named Eric. He wrote in, and he asked about Social Security. He first asked me if I thought Social Security was going to be around when some of us reached retirement. He wanted to know my view on that. But then he also asked how he could go about getting an estimate of what his Social Security retirement benefits will be when it comes time for him to retire. So we're going to address that question as well. So we got a lot to cover. Let's get started. Beginning with YNAB. So, I've talked about YNAB many times on the show. I know Jesse, the founder, he's actually been on the show as a guest. I've seen him at conferences from time to time. And, for my money, You Need a Budget, or YNAB for short, is just the best budgeting tool out there. And I've used a lot of them. I've used Mint.com. I've used Quicken, both for the PC, for Windows, and for a Mac. I've used spreadsheets. I've used a pad of paper and a pencil. I've used just about everything. And I think all of those different tools are good. And certainly, if you're using them and they're working for you, I don't see any reason that you should necessarily change. But if you're looking for a budgeting tool or you're not happy with what you're using, I really think YNAB is a great option. And I want to be clear about something with this software. It does not track your investments. We talk about other tools that do that, including Personal Capital, and even Quicken or Mint.com will track your investments. They're sort of a one-stop shop, for all of the different financial aspects of your life. And certainly, that is appealing. But because I think YNAB focuses on one thing, it really does it. It really does it well. And I found YNAB to be extremely easy to use, and the best way to sort of see very quickly where we stand, month to month with our spending, to make sure we're not spending more than we'd planned to, or if we do, at least we understand that we're spending more than maybe we expected to, and we understand where that money is going to come from. And I think part of it has been the simplicity of YNAB. I mean, at its heart, it's really just a fancy spreadsheet. Now, I don't say that, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. But actually a positive sense, because I think it's kind of how many of us see a budget. I'm sure many of you have set up a budget in an Excel spreadsheet. Unfortunately, with just a spreadsheet, it lacks a lot of the features that YNAB offers. But YNAB at its core sort of started with that spreadsheet framework, and I think it makes it just very easy to understand your budget and to understand how you're spending your money. Now, that's fine, but so what changed with YNAB 5? And I have to be honest, I was pretty nervous about this change. I really liked YNAB 4, and I come from the perspective of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And YNAB 5 wasn't just simply, hey, let's add a couple of features or tweak it here and there. It was a complete change. And so, I was a bit nervous about it. And frankly, there are a couple of things I don't like. But there are a lot of things I do like, and overall, I'm continuing to use it. I've upgraded to YNAB 5, and so let's kind of walk through what some of the big changes are. So the first big change is the way you pay for it. So with YNAB 4, it's a software product. You buy it once, you download the software, and it's yours to use for as long as you want to. And, pretty straightforward. YNAB 5 is a subscription model. You don't just pay once. You pay a subscription. You can either do it monthly or annually. I think monthly it's $5 a month. Annually, I believe I paid $45 for the year. And then when your subscription is up, whether you pick monthly or annually, you have to, renew your subscription and continue to pay. And this got some criticism, and I think, frankly, it should have. And it's not that, software as a service, which is effectively what this is necessarily a bad thing, but it does increase the cost. Now, a couple of things about that. First, you don't have to upgrade or change to YNAB 5. If you're using YNAB 4, you can continue to use it. That's the first thing. The second thing, while I'm not enamored with the subscription model, there are some advantages to it. Number one, as new changes are introduced into the software, as someday we'll eventually presumably have YNAB 6, you won't have to buy it. It'll just be automatically updated as part of your subscription. And so there certainly are some advantages to a subscription model. But when you add up the pros and cons, personally, I'd prefer not to have it. You think about it, it seems like more and more things are turning to this subscription model. And after a while, you look at your credit card statement. You have a subscription to Netflix and to Hulu, and we've got Microsoft now can sell you a Microsoft Office with a subscription. You may have Apple Music, another subscription, or Dropbox if you have a paid version. Or for that matter, iCloud, if you've bought more storage, another subscription. I mean, the list goes on and on. In fact, there's even a service now that allows you to upload your credit card statement, and it will look for subscriptions and then gives you a list of all of the services and products you're subscribed to in case you want to unsubscribe to any of them. So whether we like it or not, YNAB has sort of added to that. Again, not my favorite change to YNAB 5. I will say at the end of the day, it's probably not that much more expensive because under the old model, you didn't have to pay. You paid once and you got the software, but you did have to pay if you wanted to upgrade to a new version. So when they went from 3 to 4, for example, you would have to pay. Now, of course, you wouldn't have to upgrade right away if you didn't want to. But long term, is a subscription model dramatically more expensive? Probably not. But still, I'm sort of getting worn out with all the subscription models. This is yet another one. That's probably the thing about YNAB 5 I disliked the most, but it wasn't enough to keep me from upgrading, if you will, to YNAB 5 and using it. Now, beyond that, the second big change, and it's related to the first, is that YNAB 5 is web-based. In YNAB 4, you download it like, it's software on your computer. With YNAB 5, you're actually going to the website, logging in, and using a web-based application. Now, with that, though, there are some advantages. Again, part of it's personal preference. For me, I would just as soon use software. Although I use web-based apps all the time for other things, Gmail comes to mind. I use that every single day, frankly, more than I'd like to. So with YNAB 5, it's yet another web-based application, and that's okay. But what they've done is they've added a couple of things that I think kind of make it worth it. One is you can now automatically update your accounts. So if you recall, those of you that have used an older version with YNAB 4, for example, I would have to download all of my transactions from my bank and my credit card companies and then upload them into YNAB 4. It wasn't the end of the world. I got to the point where I kind of do it pretty quickly, once or twice a month. And, it wasn't that painful. But still, I would just as soon click a button and have all of my accounts updated automatically. And that's how YNAB 5 works. So I think that's one of the advantages to the new YNAB. The other thing is, of course, that requires you to connect all of your accounts, and that can be problematic at times. I didn't have a problem at all. We bank at Citibank. I was able to connect our Citibank checking account, our Citibank savings account, our Citibank credit cards, our main card day-to-day is the Citi Double Cash. Was able to connect all of those with YNAB 5, without any issues. And so that was very smooth. Now, I suppose there might be some issues depending on your bank, but I didn't encounter any, and it worked very, very well. So that's another big change. So again, we've got the subscription model. Don't really like it. but it is what it is. We've got a web-based app. I think that's probably a push. There are pros and cons to it. Again, it's how they're able to very easily upgrade the software, and you might not even know they've fixed a bug or they've added a feature. You just log in and it's updated. So in that sense, having a web-based app is a positive. The automatic updates to the accounts for me is a positive thing. It just makes it much, much easier, and I'm more likely now to update the accounts more frequently throughout the month rather than having to do it manually, and that'll give me some more insight into our spending, on a more frequent basis. So I think that is a very positive thing. The fourth change that's I wouldn't call it significant, but certainly it's if you've used an older version, very noticeable, and that's the user interface. Now, the good news here is they kept a lot of the elements from the old user interface and carried them forward to YNAB 5. And I think that's important because I think YNAB 4 looked really good. Again, they kind of used a spreadsheet sort of visual model, and it's something that just I think is perfect for budgeting. And they've kept that in the online version of YNAB 5. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple to sort of follow and understand. But there are some differences. With YNAB 4, I would have on a giant monitor a number of months, columns for each month across the screen, and so that I could look at a number of months at one time. With the online version, you basically look at 1 month at a time. Now, you can very easily click to previous months or even to future months if you're budgeting for the future, and that's very easy to do. You can't see multiple months. Now, the funny thing to me anyway is that I kind of like looking at multiple months, although the truth be told, I don't think I could say why. I mean, it's, you're kind of focused on the month you're in. Sometimes maybe you'd go back a month to see, what you spent on something as you're planning your current month. Maybe you'll fast forward a month and plan ahead with your budget. But beyond that, you're pretty much, at least for me, I'm pretty much focused on the month at hand. So I'm not quite sure why I like looking at multiple months on it. Maybe I just like the visual look of it. With the online YNAB 5, you see 1 month at a time, but functionally, that's all you need. And again, you can very easily, and it's very intuitive, can click back to go to the previous month or go forward to the next month. And that's very, very easy to do. Now, there are a couple of other features that I want to mention that are sort of a carryover. One deals with what's called the age of money. For those who have used YNAB and have spent any time on the YNAB site, which, by the way, whether you use YNAB or not, if you're looking to become better at budgeting your money, managing your money, highly recommend it. There are great videos, great articles, a vibrant forum where you can ask questions, and very helpful. So it's a great resource whether you use YNAB or not. But one of the concepts that Jesse preaches over at YNAB is that you don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. Now, that's sort of obvious. We all know that. One of the ways he tries to implement that with the product he's developed, YNAB, is that you'll actually live on last month's paycheck. Right? And so the idea as implemented in YNAB 5 is this concept called the age of money. All that means is when you spend $1, how long have you had that dollar? Did you get paid today and immediately went out and spent money because you didn't have any before you got paid? Or are you really living at least a month in advance, or you're spending last month's money so that when you spend money today, it was money you earned 20 or 30 days ago. And so they actually calculate that in the application, and there's a box in the top right that says the age of your money. It could be 3 days, could be a week, whatever. It kind of reminds me, growing up, my family didn't have much money. And so we literally had, when we got to payday, there was no food in the house. We'd immediately run to the grocery store. We'd go to a Kroger's down the street. Vivid memories of this. We'd put some gas in the car, go to Kroger, buy some groceries, and go home and eat because we were hungry. So I think the age of our money then was about 15 minutes. I guess that's probably not the goal. You want the age of your money to be a little older than that. Again, the concept is really just a way to measure whether you're able to sort of live on last month's paycheck, or if you will, to sort of break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. I think it's a great feature of YNAB and YNAB 5. The other thing is, of course, you can still set goals, and the visual aspects of this are very, very good. Whether it's a savings goal, paying credit card debt, whatever, and it'll give you a visual indication of how well you're doing and how much of that goal you've achieved. And of course, that's a very important part of financial planning and budgeting. So that feature is there, and I think it's very, very good. So overall, I like the product now, and I'm going to continue to use it. I think with anytime there's something new, at least for me, I don't know, maybe this is just my age, but there's sort of a hurdle to get over. I don't like change. I'm not big into change, and so YNAB 5 is definitely a change. And so it took me a little bit of time to get over that hurdle. Now that I like YNAB 5. Of course, I really liked YNAB 4. So there you go. Now, one thing I have to tell you and warn you about, this is, I mentioned the subscription model I'm not fond of. But here's the other thing. You really can't convert your YNAB 4 data into YNAB 5. There have been all kinds of issues with it. You see this on the forum. They even have an article about it. Really what they're recommending is what they call their quote-unquote fresh start migration, which, it can bring over sort of your categories and your payees and scheduled transactions and account names and things like that. But in terms of the actual data, you're going to basically start over. And that's what I ended up doing. Now, at the end of the day, it really wasn't that big of a deal. But, I know some folks have a long history of budgeting data that they don't want to lose. And I get that. And so that's why I mentioned this. This is maybe even a bigger negative than the subscription model. So those between the subscription model and not being able to import all of your data over, I think are the two big negatives, and something to really think about before you switch from YNAB 4 to YNAB 5. Now, of course, if you don't use YNAB at all and you're starting with YNAB 5 for the first time, migration, of course, won't be an issue. So that's my take on the new product. If you're using it or will use it, would love to hear what you think about it. You can shoot me an email at dr@DoughRoller.net, or even better, join our Facebook group, DoughRoller.net/Facebook group, and leave your comments there. And by the way, if you use a different tool, a different budgeting software that you really like, leave a comment in the Facebook group. We like to see what other people are doing to manage their money so that we can all learn. Who knows? Maybe there's a tool out there, a budgeting app that's even better than YNAB. So would love to hear from you. Let us know what you think. Okay. Now on to the second, segment of today's show, and that deals with this online resource that I think everyone should go read right now. And it is the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letter, the letter that Warren Buffett sends each year to shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway. Now, you might be saying, well, that's fine. We all know about that. Why are you mentioning it now? Well, because he just came out with one. He just came out with one. It was just released for fiscal 2015. You can get it at the Berkshire Hathaway website, just berkshirehathaway.com. You'll see a link to all of the shareholder letters going back to, let's see here, I think it's all the way back to 65. Yeah, 1965. And you'll see the one for fiscal 2015. I got to tell you, you really will learn all that you need to learn about investing reading his letters. And that's true even if you don't invest in individual stocks. I know a lot of people don't. They, mutual funds, ETFs, in the 401k and IRA or whatever, that's fine. You can still learn a lot about the stock market, about valuing companies, about how to handle the ups and downs of the stock market, and you're learning from the absolute best teacher you could possibly have on this topic, Warren Buffett. You can buy on Amazon a collection of all of these letters. Yes, they're free online, but there's a very inexpensive ebook, and it's just an easy way to read them all. I'm actually working my way through that, going all the way back to the very first one that he wrote, which actually wasn't under his signature. If you go all the way back to 65, he was writing them, but not under his signature all the way back then. And it's funny to see, his writing style and how it's changed. If you've read anything, any of his letters in the past, I've been to a couple of the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meetings. There are certain things he likes to sort of repeat. One is he likes to talk about the mistakes he's made as the guy running Berkshire Hathaway. He likes to talk about his mistakes, and he likes to point out that while they've had great success in the past, it may not continue in the future, particularly given the size of the company. Now, he's not suggesting that things are going to go poorly, but rather the compounded annual growth rate that they've enjoyed in the past is likely not to continue because the company is so large. The more capital you have to invest, the harder it is to invest it. Now, but the funny thing is if you go back to the 60s and early 70s, he's saying the same thing back then. I mean, he said the same thing even when they were, at least by today's standards, a very small company, which I thought was kind of funny. In his 2015 letter, and I really encourage you to read it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing in today's show. Maybe we'll do that in a future episode. But one of the things that really caught my attention, and I'm actually scrolling to it now in the letter, and it has to do with politics. And he's talking about the fact that, hey, it's an election year. By the way, he doesn't point out Republicans or Democrats at all. But what he says is, look, we're in an election year, and candidates, I'll just read it. He says, and candidates can't stop speaking about our country's problems, which, of course, only they can solve, and he has they in italics. As a result of this negative drumbeat, many Americans now believe that their children will not live as well as they themselves do. He goes on in about a page to completely derail that thinking. And he says, look, our best days are ahead. And I find his views on this very persuasive. One of the interesting things he said, look, today, people in, say, a middle class or upper middle class lifestyle, they live better than John D. Rockefeller did when Warren Buffett was born. And his point was, even great wealth back then, in terms of a lifestyle, doesn't compare to what might be a roughly average or above average lifestyle today because of just the incredible improvements we've had in everything from transportation, communications, medical services, even entertainment for that matter. And he goes into a lot more detail. I won't cover it all, but I think he does a very good job of looking at our country and its future in the big picture. And I don't think he's suggesting we don't have issues, we don't have things that we have to deal with. We always will. But he is very bullish on the future of America, and that comes out in this letter to shareholders. And it really gives you a sense of sort of his perspective. And again, I can't recommend it enough. By the way, it's also, I think his letters are a model of clarity in thinking and writing. So, even learning about investing aside for a moment, just seeing how someone who's truly brilliant thinks through issues and how he writes about them. He's a phenomenal writer. Of course, he gets some help with his letters, but this is Warren Buffett at the heart. And he does have some editors, but this is Warren Buffett. And the clarity of thought, the clarity of writing is phenomenal. So, okay, I've said enough. Anyway, I highly recommend the letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, the 2015 fiscal year. Excellent. And you should read them all if you haven't read all his letters. All right. Now on to our email that I received from a listener named Eric. As I mentioned, he had a question about Social Security. And he wanted to know, one, would Social Security be around when it's time to retire? And two, how do you go about getting an estimate of what your Social Security retirement benefits will be? All right. Well, it's a great question, Eric, and let me address both of them. So first of all, of course, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but in my opinion, Social Security will absolutely be around. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And in fact, unlike Medicare, the financial issues that we have with Social Security are not nearly as significant. Medicare, big problems. I think they'll get fixed. I don't know what that fix will look like, but much more difficult. Social Security, it has its issues, but not nearly as hard to correct. Now, that being said, I do think we will see changes to Social Security. I don't know what they'll be, but we will certainly see changes. I mean, in fact, in the current budget, we've already seen changes. You've probably read that a number of the ways you can claim Social Security are being eliminated. So that, particularly for married couples where there were certain strategies, and we've talked about them on the show in the past, but there were certain strategies that you could do that might increase your Social Security benefits that are being eliminated. That would be an example of a change. They could certainly increase the retirement age for qualifying for Social Security or for starting to receive it. And in fact, that's happened in the past, right? They've increased Social Security age. Now, they don't do it like if you're going to get Social Security and you're a year away, when they make changes, they don't usually affect people very close to the age of getting Social Security. They might affect people that are several decades away, so they give you typically in the past plenty of time to adjust. But those sorts of changes, absolutely, I could see. I could certainly see the taxes, payroll taxes on Social Security going up. I could see greater means testing, where those with substantial resources might not get as much in Social Security. I do think all of those changes are possible and likely in some form or another. But I don't think it's going away. And that's my opinion. And, that in a quarter will buy you a cheap cup of coffee. But Eric asked my opinion. There you go. Now, on to something maybe a little more practical, and that is, how do you go about getting an estimate of what your Social Security benefits will be? Well, you get a Social Security statement. Now, we get one, my wife and I, in the mail. I think it's every year, maybe every other year. And it's very informative. You see your earnings history that were subject to Social Security taxes, and then it gives you estimates not only of your future retirement benefits, but also benefits if you were disabled, and survivor benefits if you were to pass away, you have a family, so it's a very useful thing. Now, I'm still at an age where I kind of look at it and flip through it and think, that's nice, and then throw it away. It's still a number of years away, but I find it very useful when we get it. Now, you may not have received one. You can actually get one online. And where you go, here we go, SSA, which stands for Social Security Administration, ssa.gov/my account. ssa.gov/my account. And you can actually, it seems kind of funny, but, you sign up for an account at Social Security and they will give you a lot of information. You can do a couple of things. You can actually request a replacement Social Security card under certain circumstances, which is actually a new feature of the site. You can get your Social Security statement, which I mentioned, and really, I guess, the focus of Eric's question. Again, that'll give you estimates of your future retirement, disability, and survivor benefits. You can also, by the way, make sure that they've got your earnings correct. So they're only going to show your earnings subject to Social Security. So if you make more than what's taxed, you might not see that. But you want to make sure they've got it right. If you made enough money to max out Social Security taxes last year, let's say, and they have you for zero, then there's a phone call to be made. So you can look at your earnings as reported to Social Security, the Social Security Administration, and verify that the amounts that they've got are correct. You can even get an estimate of your Social Security and Medicare taxes that you've paid. So very useful resource, and I think perfect for Eric's question. If you're looking to get an estimate of your Social Security retirement benefits, that's the place to go, ssa.gov/my account. Well, there you go. By the way, I know it's been a while since I've published a podcast. The reason is I've had unbelievable technical difficulties. This is about the 10th time, and I'm not kidding, I've recorded this podcast. When I'm done, I'm going to listen to it to make sure there aren't technical glitches. And of course, if you're listening to this, that means I did listen to it and there were no technical glitches. And I got the darn thing published. So that, fingers crossed, and hopefully I've solved them. But I've changed computers, I've changed software. Well, thank you for your patience. And if you've listened to a couple of the past episodes that had terrible technical issues, I apologize. At least I'm aware of the issue now, focused on it, hopefully get this thing corrected and get back on track. Hey, if you want to reach out to me, you know how to do it, dr@DoughRoller.net. The better way to reach out is the Facebook group. Just go to DoughRoller.net/Facebook group. You'll be redirected to the Facebook group, and happy to have you join. We've got about 340 people in there now, very active. Ask your questions. You get responses right away, and people are really nice and helpful. So that's just terrific. I appreciate all of you who are already part of the group. Hey, hope you have a great day. I really hope there are no technical glitches with this podcast. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.